What's a boy like you doing here? The voice cracked like a whip across the barracks. Boots stopped mid-polish. Conversations died in an instant. All eyes turned toward me. Private Marcus Hale, the new face in a room full of legacies. Sergeant Braddock stood in the doorway, jaw set, eyes locked on me like a hawk circling prey. He didn't ask the question because he wanted an answer. He asked it to tell everyone else what he thought of me, that I didn't belong, that I was already a failure before I even started. Braddock's boots slammed the floor as he closed the distance, each step echoing against the cinder block walls. He stopped in front of my rack, staring at the name tape stitched onto my uniform. "Hale," he said slowly, like the word tasted sour. "You got no father in the Corps, no uncle with stripes, no family who bled green before you. You're just some nobody off the street." His hand shot to my locker, yanking it open before I could move. Shirts folded perfectly, boots lined toe to heel, letters from home stacked neat. He ripped one open, read the words aloud with a sneer. "Stay strong, Marcus. Proud of you. Love, Mom." The whole room froze. A grown man's most private comfort turned into ammunition. Laughter rippled, some of it nervous, some of it cruel. I felt my knuckles go white as I gripped the bed frame. My body burned to react, to shove him back, but discipline drilled into me held the line. You don't strike your sergeant. You don't lose your bearing. You take it. You endure. That's what separates soldiers from boys. Braddock wasn't done. He yanked one of my neatly folded uniforms and threw it onto the floor. Mud from his boot ground into the fabric. "Pathetic," he spat. "You think you can wear this uniform with honor? You haven't earned a damn thread of it." His voice carried, making sure everyone heard. My ears rang, not from noise, but from the humiliation pounding through my chest. I heard chuckles from the back of the room. One of the guys muttered, "Weak link," under his breath. Another laughed louder, safe behind Braddock's authority. But then my eyes caught Ramirez. Corporal Ramirez, drill assistant, standing by the doorway. He didn't speak. He didn't move. But his eyes told a different story. Not mockery, not laughter, just recognition. He saw it. He saw the way I stood there, fists tight, jaw clenched, holding the line. He didn't step in. Not yet. But that look said enough. Someone knew this wasn't about weakness. It was about something else. Braddock grabbed my dog tags, yanked them hard enough to sting my neck. "Hale, you're a mistake in this platoon. You'll break the first time life gets hard out there. And when you do, you'll take good men with you. That's why I'm going to ride you harder than the rest. If you don't like it, pack your bags now." He let the tags drop against my chest. The clink was louder than it should have been, like steel closing a door behind me. Silence. No one moved. Braddock stormed out, satisfied he'd made his point. The others went back to polishing boots, folding shirts, whispering, but the damage was done. I sat down on my bunk staring at the mud ground into my uniform. My mom's letter torn and left hanging from the locker. My heart hammered, but I forced my face to stay stone. Because if I broke, even for a second, they'd be right. I thought that was the end of it. Just another humiliation I'd have to swallow in a long list to come. But then something shifted. As I bent down to pick up the ruined shirt, Ramirez walked past. He didn't stop, didn't break protocol, but he slowed just enough to whisper, "Keep standing, Hale." And then he was gone. The words were nothing more than a murmur, but to me they landed like a lifeline. Someone had noticed. Someone had seen that I hadn't cracked, that I was still standing. It didn't erase the humiliation, but it lit something deep inside me. A small fire, a promise that this wasn't over. What I never expected was how that fire would grow, how it would carry me through nights of punishment, through drills meant to break me, through laughter meant to bury me, how the same sergeant who mocked me would one day choke on the truth of what I really carried inside. But that moment, that look, that whisper, was where it began. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The rain came down hard that morning, pelting the parade field like nails on tin. We were soaked before we even lined up, water dripping from helmets, rifles slick in our hands. Sergeant Braddock's voice carried through the storm like thunder. "Hale, front and center. You think you're soldier material? Let's see if you can outlast the sky. He singled me out again, like he always did, his eyes burning with the kind of satisfaction only bullies know. He ordered me into extra sprints while the rest of the platoon stood. At parade rest, watching. Every step splashed mud into my boots. My lungs screamed. But I kept running. 50 yards, 100. Back and forth. I told myself, don't give him what he wants. Don't let him see you break. By the 10th sprint, I couldn't feel my legs. My shirt clung to me like a second skin. I heard one of the recruits snicker. Braddock's gonna run him into the ground. Someone else added, better now than later. Weak ones don't last. The words cut deep, but I pushed harder. In my head, I kept hearing my mom's voice from that torn letter. Stay strong, Marcus. I gritted my teeth and kept going. Braddock finally barked, that's enough. Not because he cared, but because he was bored. I stumbled back into formation, drenched, my heart pounding so hard it rattled my ribs. That was just the start. In the chow hall that evening, I carried my tray, hungry as hell. Braddock walked by, caught my eye, and with a flick of his wrist, knocked my entire tray onto the floor. Food scattered. The room went silent. A few recruits laughed nervously. One muttered, guess Hale's on a diet tonight. I bent down, picked up the mess, face burning with shame, stomach growling. No one helped, except Ramirez. He slid by quietly, almost unnoticed, and placed a bread roll on the edge of my tray before moving on like nothing happened. He didn't even look at me, but I saw it. I felt it. That little gesture hit me harder than the shove. It told me I wasn't completely alone. Nights were worse. After lights out, I'd push myself in the dark. Push-ups until my arms shook. Sit-ups until my abs cramped. Running in place to build endurance. Sweat pooled on the barracks floor, my body begging me to stop. But I kept going. I told myself, if I can outlast this pain, I can outlast Braddock. Sometimes I caught Ramirez watching from his bunk. He never said a word, but the look in his eyes, like he was waiting to see how far I'd go, kept me honest. One night during a gear inspection, Braddock found my pack too light. He shoved an extra 30 pounds of sandbags inside and told me to carry it for the night march. Let's see if Book Boy can handle real weight. The others chuckled. Some even shook their heads, muttering that I was doomed. The march stretched for miles. My shoulders screamed, blisters opened on my feet, and every step felt like glass cutting into my skin. I wanted to drop. I wanted to quit. But then I heard the cadence echoing from the front of the line. Left, right, left, right. It was Braddock's voice, meant to mock me, but it gave me rhythm. I started breathing with each step. Left, right, left, right. 1 foot at a time. I carried that weight until dawn broke, and when we returned, I didn't collapse. I stood there trembling but upright. Some recruits actually looked at me differently that morning. I caught one whisper. Damn, he made it. But Braddock wasn't satisfied. During weapons training, he made me stay after the others left. You're sloppy, he said, grabbing my rifle and tossing it to the dirt. Clean it again. I spent hours stripping, cleaning, reassembling. My hands were raw from the steel brush, fingers trembling from exhaustion. Midnight came, then 1. I stayed hunched over that weapon until it gleamed. When I finally locked it back together, I saw Ramirez in the shadows, arms crossed. He stepped forward, picked up the rifle, and nodded once. Good job, he whispered. Then he disappeared again. Just 2 words, but they kept me going. The climax came 2 weeks later during the obstacle course. It was our final timed run. Mud pits, rope climbs, walls taller than we thought we could handle. Everyone was already pumped, nerves high. Braddock set his sights on me again. Hale goes last. Let's end this show with a laugh. He sneered, knowing everyone would be tired and eager to mock me. One by one, recruits finished the course, collapsing at the end, cheering each other on. Finally, it was my turn. I started slow, hearing the mutters, He's gonna fail. Watch him choke. Braddock shouted, Move faster, Hale. You're embarrassing this platoon. My chest burned. My arms shook as I climbed the rope, slipping twice, skin tearing. I wanted to let go. I wanted to give up. But then I remembered the chow hall bread, the whispered, keep standing. the weight I'd carried alone. I pushed through, pulling myself higher, over the wall, through the mud, crawl under the barbed wire, step by step, breath by breath. The last obstacle was a wall twice my height. Braddock stood there, arms crossed, smirking. "End of the line, Hale. Let's see you fly." The platoon gathered, waiting for me to fail. My hand slipped on the wood. My legs screamed. For a second, it looked hopeless. Then from the corner of my eye, I saw Ramirez. He wasn't supposed to move, but his hand tightened into a fist, almost like he was willing me forward. That tiny signal hit me like lightning. I dug deep, let out a roar. I didn't know I had, and launched myself up. My fingers caught the edge. My nails scraped, blood under them, but I pulled myself over. I landed on the other side hard, breathless, covered in mud. Silence. No laughter, no jeers, just silence. Braddock's smirk was gone. He looked almost unsettled. The recruits stared at me like they didn't know who I was anymore. For the first time, I felt the shift. They'd expected me to break, but I hadn't. I had changed. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. I just stood there, chest heaving, mud dripping, and looked back at them. I was still the same Marcus Hale, but something in their eyes told me they no longer saw me as the weakest link. They saw something else, something Braddock couldn't control. That was the night I realized pain could be fuel, and the first time I sensed that everything was about to turn. The storm wasn't over. It was just beginning. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The air was thick with tension that morning. You could feel it before the sun even broke the horizon. Today wasn't about drills or routine push-ups or running until your legs gave out. Today was the final simulation, live fire conditions, a mock mission designed to break us or prove us. And everyone knew the stakes. The platoon that failed would face weeks of punishment, and the soldier who cracked under pressure would be branded for the rest of training. I woke up early, staring at the ceiling of the barracks, heart pounding before my boots even hit the floor. My hands were steady, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. This was it. Everything I had taken so far, the humiliation, the isolation, the nights grinding my body into the ground when no one was watching, it all led to this day. I had one shot to prove I wasn't the weak link Braddock kept calling me. When formation was called, Braddock strutted down the line, his chest puffed, barking orders like he was already sure of the outcome. His eyes found me instantly, like they always did. "Hale," he sneered. "You'll be radio operator. Desk job suits you." Laughter rippled through the ranks. I stood silent, fists tight at my sides, forcing myself not to react. Inside, though, I burned. Radio operator. The job no one wanted. The job mocked as the safe role. The one that didn't belong in combat. He knew exactly what he was doing. We rolled out onto the range, rifles ready, gear strapped tight. The mission brief was clear. Move across open ground, secure the objective, and extract under simulated enemy fire. Timers were set. Evaluators stood by with clipboards, ready to record every failure. The mood was sharp, tense. This wasn't a drill. It felt real. At first, things went smooth. We advanced by the book. Cover fire, movement, leapfrogging positions. My job was to keep the squad connected, relaying positions, checking in with command. But halfway through, the radio hissed with static. No voice, no signal. Nothing but white noise cutting through my headset. I tapped the receiver, tried again. Still dead. My stomach dropped. Without comms, we were blind. No updates, no air support, no coordination. And just then, the evaluators triggered the ambush. Simulated gunfire erupted from the ridge. Blanks cracked, explosions from training charges shook the ground, smoke filled the air. Chaos. Braddock barked nonsense orders, yelling over the noise. "Push forward. No, fall back. Get down, damn it." His voice cracked with panic, his movements jerky. The squad looked around, confused, caught between obeying and surviving. And then it happened. 2 recruits froze in the open, trapped under simulated machine gun fire, unable to move. The evaluators marked them hit, and the rest of the squad hesitated, fear spreading like wildfire. Braddock shouted louder, but it didn't help. If anything, it made things worse. I slammed the radio against the dirt, pulled out my kit, and started tearing into the wires. Sweat stung my eyes as I worked. "Come on," I muttered under my breath. My fingers moved fast, instincts kicking in. This wasn't the first time I'd seen a radio fail. Months of quiet study, of learning gear nobody thought I could handle. It was paying off. Sparks jumped, a wire caught, then a voice crackled through. "This is command, say again." My chest surged with relief. I keyed the mic. "This is Hale. 2 men down in the open. Suppressive fire required on ridgeline grid, Bravo 7. My voice was steady, clipped, the way I'd practiced alone when no one was listening. A moment later, the simulation answered. Smoke charges burst on the ridge, creating cover. The 2 pinned recruits scrambled back to safety. The squad cheered, some even clapped shoulders as they passed me. But Braddock wasn't cheering. His face twisted, like my success was an insult. "Don't think fixing a damn radio makes you a soldier," barked, his voice carrying more venom than confidence. But the squad wasn't listening to him anymore. Their eyes were on me, and for the first time I felt the shift. The mission pressed on. With comms restored, I took over coordination, feeding positions, calling maneuvers, keeping us tight. Braddock tried to reassert himself, but every wrong order he gave was drowned out by the calm, clear updates I relayed. "Alpha, move left. Bravo, hold fire until smoke clears. Command, objective secure." The words came naturally, like I'd been waiting my whole life to speak them. The squad responded instantly. They trusted me. Not because I yelled, not because I threatened, but because I gave them direction that worked. By the time we reached the extraction point, the platoon wasn't following Braddock anymore. They were following me, and everyone knew it. When the final whistle blew, signaling the end of the simulation, the evaluators scribbled furiously on their clipboards. The squad collapsed into the dirt, gasping, covered in sweat and smoke. I dropped my gear, chest heaving, heart racing. I thought maybe it was over, that maybe I'd finally done enough to be seen, but the climax was still waiting. We were ordered back to the staging area, lined up in front of the review stand. Carl Pierce himself had come to observe the final run. His presence sent a shiver down the line. This wasn't just another evaluation. This was the moment that could define our careers. Pierce's eyes swept across the platoon, then landed on me. "Private Hale," he said, his voice cutting like steel. "Step forward." My boots felt like they weighed 100 pounds, but I forced them to move. I stood at attention, mud streaked across my face, uniform torn, chest still rising and falling with heavy breaths. Braddock stepped forward too, uninvited. "Sir, with all due respect, Hale got lucky. He fixed a radio, nothing more. He doesn't have what it takes to lead men." His voice was desperate, sharp, filled with fear disguised as authority. The squad shifted uneasily, some glancing at me, some glaring at him. Pierce didn't answer immediately. He studied me, eyes searching, as if weighing something. Then he spoke words that detonated like a grenade in that silent field. "Private Hale, you left something off your file." My throat tightened. I knew what was coming, but no one else did. "You failed to mention you completed advanced ROTC training before enlisting. Top of your class in tactical communications. You're not just a recruit. You're one of the most qualified men in this field." Gasps rippled through the line. The recruits stared, mouths open. Braddock's face drained of color. He stumbled back a step, like the ground had given way beneath him. Pierce turned to him. "Sergeant Braddock, today your platoon didn't survive because of your leadership. They survived in spite of it. Hale carried them when you lost control. That's the truth." The silence that followed was suffocating. No laughter, no mutters. Nothing but the pounding of my own heartbeat. For the first time, I wasn't the target. I was the answer. The squad's eyes burned into me, not with ridicule, but with respect. Ramirez's gaze met mine from down the line, and for once he didn't hide it. He nodded, slow and proud. I felt a lump in my throat, the weight of everything I'd endured finally lifting. Braddock opened his mouth to argue, but no words came. He knew it was over. That was the day the balance shifted. The day the so-called weak link became the one holding the chain together. The humiliation, the punishment, the nights alone in the dark, it all made sense now. It wasn't wasted, it was fuel. I walked back into formation, standing taller than I ever had before. The others adjusted around me, not pushing me to the edge anymore, but making room beside them. Equal. That was the day I stopped being the recruit no one believed in. That was the day I became a soldier in their eyes. And what I didn't know then, what none of us knew, was that this was only the beginning. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The morning after the final simulation felt different. The barracks were quiet, not the usual clatter of boots and voices. You could sense everyone was waiting for something to happen. Word had spread fast. Hale had carried the squad when Braddock fell apart. Some recruits were still whispering about it, like they couldn't believe it. Others avoided eye contact, embarrassed they'd ever laughed at him. But Braddock wasn't done. He stormed into the room like a man trying to hold on to sand slipping through his fingers. His voice was louder, sharper, desperate to remind us who wore the stripes. On your feet! You think one lucky drill changes anything? You're still nothing without me. His glare drilled straight into Hale, but the power behind it was weaker now. Hale stood tall, boots together, eyes forward. No smirk, no defiance. Just solid, steady bearing. And that silence cut deeper than words. Braddock's face flushed red. He wanted Hale to fight back, to break the discipline he clung to. But Hale didn't give him that. Ramirez noticed. He leaned slightly from his bunk, eyes narrowing at Braddock like he'd had enough of watching this circus. Later in the chow hall, the tension boiled over. Braddock sat at the front, chewing like he owned the place, while Hale quietly took a seat near the back. A couple of recruits who once mocked him now slid over, setting their trays near his. No words, just a small gesture. But it said everything. They were choosing sides. Braddock noticed. He slammed his tray down, stood, and barked, "What, you all soldiers now? Following Hale?" The room froze. Forks clinked, heads bowed. Then, without warning, Ramirez stood. Calm, steady, but loud enough for all to hear. "With respect, Sergeant, we followed the one who didn't panic when it mattered." Gasps spread like wildfire. "You didn't talk back to Braddock. Not unless you were ready for hell." Braddock's fist curled. "Say that again, Corporal." Ramirez's jaw tightened. "We followed the one who led. That's the truth." Everyone braced for a blow, but it never came. Braddock's hand hovered in the air, trembling with rage before he dropped it. He turned and stormed out, leaving his authority in pieces behind him. That moment hit harder than any punch. It was the first time someone openly said what we'd all seen. Braddock had failed. Hale hadn't. The rest of the day, you could feel the shift. In drills, recruits looked to Hale first. If he moved, they moved. If he called something out, they listened. Braddock tried to bark orders louder, but his words didn't carry the same weight. Even the evaluators noticed. One sergeant from another platoon muttered, "Looks like your boys found a new backbone." Braddock's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. That night, the command called for a formation. The whole company lined up under the floodlights, shadows long across the field. Colin Pierce stepped forward, voice calm but cutting. Yesterday, Platoon Bravo succeeded in their simulation. Not because of luck, not because of standard leadership, but because one soldier stood firm when the rest faltered. His eyes swept across us before landing on Hale. "Step forward, Private Hale." Hale moved, every step deliberate, mud-stained, uniform pressed as sharp as it could be. He stood at attention in front of the entire company, heart pounding, but face unshaken. Pierce continued, "It takes more than stripes to lead. It takes clarity under pressure. It takes resilience." Hale demonstrated that. He turned, looked straight at Braddock. "Some of you forgot that leadership is earned. Not shouted, not bullied. Earned." The words dropped like hammers. Braddock stood stiff, eyes locked forward, but his face was pale, sweat dripping down his neck. Then came the moment no one expected. Pierce announced, "Effective immediately, Sergeant Braddock is relieved of his duties with this platoon. Corporal Ramirez will assume interim responsibilities until further notice." Gas tore through the line. Braddock's chest heaved, his career cracking in front of us. He tried to protest, voice breaking. Sir, with respect, this is... Pierce cut him off with a single glare. Dismissed. And just like that, it was over. The silence that followed was deafening. Hale didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just stood there, stone-faced, as if every insult, every humiliation had led to this exact moment. Ramirez glanced at him, pride flickering in his eyes. Some recruits clapped his shoulder when the formation broke. Quiet gestures of respect that meant more than any speech. Hale had been redefined, not by luck, but by resilience. He wasn't the weak link anymore. He was the example. Later that night, back in the barracks, the mood was heavy but different. No more snickers behind his back. No more muttered insults. Instead, one of the guys who used to mock him asked, almost shy, Hale, how'd you keep calm yesterday? I froze out there. Hale didn't lecture. He just said, one step at a time. That's all you can do. The room went quiet, every ear catching those words. Before lights out, Ramirez walked by Hale's bunk, paused and gave a firm nod. No words, no theatrics, just a silent salute of respect between soldiers. Hale returned it with a small nod of his own. That was enough. That night, as taps played and the barracks fell into silence, it was clear the platoon had changed. The mockery was gone. The weight of Braddock's shadow had lifted. And Hale, once the outsider, stood at the center, not because he demanded it, but because he'd earned it. That was the night he stopped being just a recruit. That was the night the platoon learned the true meaning of respect. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The final week at Fort Ironclad felt different. The days were shorter, the drills fewer, but the weight of everything that had happened lingered in the air. We had lived through humiliation, punishment, and one of the hardest tests of our lives. And somehow Marcus Hale, once the quiet target of every joke, was the name on everyone's lips. That morning, the barracks woke to the sound of boots hitting the floor and the usual barked orders. But there was no Braddock. His absence spoke louder than his voice ever had. The platoon lined up for morning formation under the gray dawn sky. Hale stood among us, same uniform, same boots, but not the same man. He carried himself differently now, head high, shoulders squared. He looked like someone who had walked through fire and came out standing. During chow, the tables told the story better than words. Hale no longer sat alone. Recruits who once mocked him now fought for space at his table, sliding trays beside his like it was the most natural thing in the world. A kid who used to laugh at every insult thrown his way leaned in and asked, Hale, how'd you not crack when Braddock was riding you? Hale chewed slow, wiped his mouth, and said simply, I remembered why I was here. That was enough. His words landed heavy, not flashy, but strong. Ramirez, sitting across, gave the faintest smile. It was the kind of moment that told you brotherhood had been earned the hard way. But the real test of respect came during evening assembly. The entire company gathered under the floodlights, the flag snapping in the night wind. Colonel Pierce stood tall, voice sharp as he addressed us. In this business, men are broken and rebuilt. Some break and stay broken. Some never rebuild. But every so often, one of you takes everything thrown at him and refuses to bend. That's what defines a soldier. He paused, eyes scanning the line before settling on Hale. Private Hale, front and center. Hale stepped forward, boots crunching on gravel. The entire platoon's eyes followed. Pierce looked him over, then said loud enough for all to hear, You walked in here underestimated, mocked, pushed, tested harder than most, and you never quit. That's the mark of a leader. Not the stripes, not the noise. Resilience. He turned to us. Every man here should take note. Respect isn't given. It's earned, and Hale earned it. For a second, the field was dead silent. Then, like a wave, the platoon snapped to attention and saluted. Not because they were told to, but because they wanted to. Even Ramirez, usually so quiet, held his salute a little longer, his eyes locked on Hale with a kind of pride you don't see often. Hale didn't smile. He didn't need to. He just stood there, returning the salute, steady as a rock. That was the climax. The reversal no one could have imagined back when Braddock tore his letters and ground mud into his uniform. The recruit who was humiliated in front of us all was now the one every man looked to with respect. When lights went out that night, the barracks felt different. Quiet, calm, but not heavy. Before Hale lay down, Ramirez passed by and muttered, "You stood when the rest of us didn't. Don't forget that." Hale didn't answer. He just nodded, pulled the blanket over, and stared at the ceiling with a faint glimmer in his eyes. That was his legacy. Not the stripes, not a medal. Just the quiet respect of men who'd seen him stand when it mattered most. And in this place, there's nothing greater than that. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next chapters of this journey. The last image that stays with me is simple but unforgettable. Marcus Hale standing beneath the American flag at morning formation. The wind tugged at the fabric, red, white, and blue snapping hard against the pole. And every soldier in that line turned to him without being told. No command, no order, just one by one, hands rose in salute. Not for rank, not for medals, but for respect. And there was Hale, steady as stone, eyes forward, carrying himself like he had been forged by the fire of every trial they had thrown at him. The silence of that moment said more than any speech ever could. When I think back on his story, I think about all the times a man is tested in ways that feel unfair. The jokes that cut deep, the orders that break you down, the prejudice that tells you you'll never be enough. And yet, if you endure, if you hold the line, those same trials can become the very steel that makes you unshakable. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And in the military, we know better than anyone. Actions speak louder than words. Hale didn't win anyone over by talking. He won them by standing, by refusing to quit when every voice told him to. That's the lesson I carry from him. Respect isn't handed out. It's earned brick by brick, step by step, through resilience, through dignity, through the way you stand tall when others bow. And when you do, even your enemies are forced to acknowledge it. If this story speaks to you, share your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button to show your support and subscribe so you won't miss the next stories of honor, brotherhood, and resilience. Until then, stay strong, stay steady, and remember, you're never standing alone.